Hello everybody, Mike Westfall here with McDonald Garden Center. Hope everybody's having a great day. Today we're going to be talking about grow your own bouquet on this live webinar. So thank you for joining us. Feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. If I don't get to your question right away, I will at the end. Let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And let us know if you've got any questions or comments afterwards. All of our webinars are on our webpage. If you go to mcdonaldgardencenter.com and click on the Garden Guru tab, you can see all of our webinars. But definitely you want to go and subscribe to our YouTube page, onto our YouTube channel. We've got all of our videos in store there, and we've got more coming. We're really excited about some different things that we're going to be doing on our YouTube channel, so you definitely going to want to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's got a lot coming in the future, and a ton right now. If you want to go back and watch all my old webinars, you can go to our YouTube channel, so we hope you can check that out. All right, today we're going to talk about growing your own bouquet. What does that mean? Growing your own cut flower garden. So, lots and lots of different options here, lots of different ways that you can do it. I'm going to show you lots and lots of images, and we're going to roll through this. I've got lots and lots of slides to get through, just so you can get an idea of all the different types of plants and possibilities and options for you. I think it's most important to start with just a couple things, which is kind of preparation, kind of thinking about your cut flower garden. If you're going to be growing plants to use for cutting, you want to take just a little bit of time to plan. I mean, I kind of say this with any garden project. It's just take a second and just kind of think about what you're doing. Talk to yourself about which location is going to be best. So let's kind of run through the different things. First, kind of think about your son's situation. That's always going to be one of the first questions that we're going to ask here at the Garden Center. And really what I want you to do is have the information ready, so when you come to shop at the Garden Center, you've got all your information prepared. So the first thing is going to be your sunlight. So that's why I got that image over there of the sun coming through the trees, because it can be in the shade, it can be in the sun. You probably are going to have the best cut flower garden if you have a little bit of both. You're going to have lots and lots of plants in the sun. We're going to go through all those. You got a little bit less in the shade, but some really, really good ones, which we'll talk about. So having a little bit of both is a great option, but you can do a cut flower garden really anywhere. Take some time and kind of draw it out a little bit. Of course, it doesn't have to be super fancy. I always like to just say, hey, if you come into the Garden Center and you say, hey, I've got a 10 by 12 area that I want to devote to a cut flower garden, that really helps us point you in the right direction and get you going on the right path. So know your sunlight, know the size of your area that you're working in, and that can vary. I mean, that's what's cool about a cut flower garden is it could be small, it could be big, it could be put into the landscape. I'm going to show you a couple different examples of that. But have a little bit of a plan, a little bit of an idea. A little overhead bird's eye view is always helpful to us, especially if we're talking about scope and different size areas. So if we know your length and your width, then we can definitely help point you in the right direction. And then I think my biggest tip is come and see us frequently. For a cut flower garden, most of us are going to want blooming plants throughout the year. So if we want a garden that's going to be producing blooms, spring, summer, fall, even winter, then we need to kind of keep visiting the Garden Center. Some things like bulbs, we're going to talk about bulbs. Bulbs you have to get in the fall to bloom in the spring, and then you have to get the ones in the spring that bloom in the summer. So you've got to kind of prepare and plan and do a little bit of thinking through it. But I think the most important thing is visit the Garden Center. I usually say once a month. Go to your local garden center once a month and you'll see the different blooming plants. I mean, typically in a garden center, we're going to carry plants that are blooming at that time. So we're not going to carry a lot of plants that are going to be blooming 3 or 4 or 5 months later. So typically if you're looking for blooming plants throughout the year and at different periods of the year, you definitely want to visit the Garden Center throughout the year multiple times. Whether you purchase something or not, just good to kind of get in the Garden Center, walk around and see us, ask questions. Maybe you've got some issues that we need to help you with, but definitely just to see the blooming plants so that your cut flower garden has opportunities throughout the year. Next thing are tools and supplies. What are we going to need to be successful with a cut flower garden? Well, these are my 3 go-tos whenever I talk about gardening. These are kind of my 3 essential tools. One, for a cut flower garden, you're definitely going to need a pair of pruners. And if you're out in the garden a lot and you really want a nice pair, these are Felcos. Felcos are what I carry with me all the time when I'm in the garden center, at home working in the garden. They are the best pruners out there. So if you're going to be pruning a lot, you might as well get the best pruners. Now take care of them. They're expensive, and you can get cheaper ones. You, of course, if you're haphazard, you happen to leave your tools out in the yard sometimes, then of course there's lots of cheap options. I have lots of cheap pruners that I kind of hang on to, and sometimes I'll leave them outside. It won't be the end of the world, but I always carry my Felcos and I take care of them. I've had them for almost 16 years now, and I haven't sharpened them, and they cut just like they're brand new. So if you want a good pair of pruners, Felcos are the ones, but there's tons and tons of options for you of different ones that fit different sizes of hands and different types of cutting ranges. So definitely going to need a pair of pruners because we're going to have to cut all of our flowers off. Watering is going to be important. Get the Dram watering wand. It is the best tool out there. Gets the water right down to the root system. It's easy to water hanging baskets, containers with it. If you're here at the garden center, you'll see one of these on every single hose here at the garden center. That's because it's the most essential tool when watering. So definitely going to want to get that. It'll save your back a lot of heartache too. And then Biotone Starter. We're going to be planting lots of plants throughout the year. Get yourself some Biotone Starter. We want to use this every time we plant a plant in the ground, in a container, anytime. It is the way to start off your plants for success. Develops the root systems, has beneficial bacteria, mycorrhizae, all of these great things that help the plant survive, whether it's drought, whether it's rainy. It just helps the plant, and it's a great way to get them started. Of course, you're going to need other plant foods throughout the year. We can get you pointed in that right direction, but really these are the essentials because we're going to be planting a fair amount in a cut flower garden because we're going to be visiting the garden center frequently throughout the year so that we can see different plants and when they're blooming. We're going to need a pair of pruners and we're going to need a water. So those are 3 essential tools. The next thing is we're going to need to plant. We're going to have to plant. Our cut flowers are going to be some that are going to last us very, very long time. Some will be some annuals, maybe a mix of annuals. Perennials and trees and shrubs add value because they come back. They're year-round. Maybe they're evergreen. There's lots and lots of different options. I'm going to show you a bunch of them. But we want to invest in our soil almost as much as we are into our plants. And what that means is that most of us in the Hampton Roads area or across Virginia are going to have pretty clay-based soil over there. So we want to amend it. So we're going to add compost and perlite. Compost and perlite are going to be what you want to amend your soil with. It's going to make your planting mix much better. Now you don't want to take your clay soil away and add like a potting soil or a planting mix or something directly to the hole. You want to mix it into your existing soil. Having your native soil is very important. That root system will go outside of that hole at some point and have to deal with your native soil. So you want to get it used to it and acclimated to it. So usually we say a third your soil, a third compost, third perlite, mix it all together. Basically what I say is dig your hole, dump some compost, dump some perlite into it, mix it up, make sure it looks good, and then backfill with that. So invest in your soil. I can't tell you how beneficial that is to do that. Next is going to be mulching. I definitely feel like mulching is super, super important. Mulching keeps weeds out, keeps your soil temperature pretty consistent. It's going to keep moisture in, and it's going to keep the soil temperature at the right range. When we have fluctuations in temperatures, it'll really, really help keep that soil kind of nice and consistent. Really, really beneficial in keeping weeds out, and I think it makes the cut flower garden or any part of your yard look much better. So it kind of finishes it off. It makes it look really nice. And another benefit is it adds organic matter. So it's going to break down, right? So compost, it's going to break down and naturally become a compost and work its way into the soil and add organic matter, which typically is what our soil lacks the most, is organic matter. So mulch is very, very important. All right, next I'm gonna show you a couple garden examples just to get your ideas, just get your brain kind of thinking about different looks and different ideas where you can do it in the yard, different thoughts like that. So I think we all think of a cut flower garden, we think of this, right? We think of plants, kind of growing all together, and I think this is a great way to consider it because a lot of these perennials, a lot of them are going to be perennials. We're going to talk about a lot of these plants, but a lot of perennials make great cut flowers. So they're going to be different sizes. You're going to get some that are tall, like a tall phlox or daylilies back here in the back. So you've got lots and lots of different options for heights and ranges and different sizes for your garden. I think a lot of us think of this as kind of like that, Cape Cod, that kind of country look, which is great. It's an amazing way of doing it, and it's a great way to get a lot of plants into a small space. These can live together. This is a full-grown garden here, so it's not going to look like this right when you plant it, but over time, perennials get bigger and bigger each year, and shrubs get bigger and bigger each year, so you kind of plan and prepare for that, and then, hey, once you get to this, you don't have to mulch as much, which is really, really nice, too. You still want to mulch a little bit, keep your plants nice and fresh and keep, the leaf litter out and stuff like that, and I think mulching is very, very important, but this is kind of what I think all of us think about. Another example here, you can see lots and lots of different mixes here. We've got cone flowers over here, and we've got black-eyed Susans here. We've got, it looks like maybe some, maybe it might be a hydrangea over here, or maybe another type of tall phlox. But lots and lots of great options just to kind of get your ideas going. And so this is, I think, typically what we think of when we think of a cut flower garden, which can work. It can work very, very well, but you can do it so many different ways. You can row it up. I always like to make it accessible. We want to get in there and cut our flowers, so we want to be able to put them in spaces that we can get to. So like something like this big grass back in the background, that's a great option to fill a space that maybe you can't get into. Maybe you do use the grass a little bit for some cut greenery. We're going to talk about that. But having those plants that you're going to be able to cut on and use those flowers, having those accessible is really important. So sometimes you might want a little bit of a meandering path through your cut flower garden. Sometimes you might just row it up, or you can do it in raised beds. So it doesn't really necessarily, there's no kind of defined way of doing a cut flower garden. You can do it in so many different ways. You can do them in containers. If you live on a balcony or porch, you can definitely, or if all you have is a balcony and porch, you can do them a lot in containers. You can see right over here, we've got a container here with some good flowers growing in it. We've got these raised beds behind me. We've got zinnias growing here. It looks like black-eyed Susans back there in the back. So a great opportunity to do this is in a raised bed, because it's going to be easy to access too. So you're going to be able to get to it because it's a little bit raised up. You can control the soil. There's lots of benefits to raised beds. I think we always think vegetables, but you can do a cut flower garden in a raised bed. So lots and lots of opportunities there. And of course, mixing plants into your landscape. Let's say you have an established landscape, you've got some pockets and some areas that you can always add plants, or you're always changing things, right? Gardening, we're always kind of changing and doing different things to our landscape, into our yards. And so by adding hydrangeas into your landscape is a great option to just add flowering plants that you can cut and use for cut flowers. And you can add these throughout the landscape. It looks like this might be a little bit over here. It looks like this could be like maybe like a coreopsis maybe. I'll show you some of those. So you can just add these little elements to your landscape. It's a great way to add a cut flower garden to your landscape. I mean, basically we're just adding plants. So no defined way of doing it. A little bit of planning, a little bit of preparation. Come and visit the garden center and see different plants throughout the year. I'm going to show you now a huge list of plants. I'm going to try and run through these as fast as I possibly can so I don't keep you too long because it is a long list. And this is just scratching the surface on cut flowers. There are a ton of options out there. If I were to name them all, it would take me all day. So what we're going to do is we're just going to run through some of my favorites, some of the most popular ones, ones that you've probably heard of, some that you might even have already in your landscape, and you might not have known that they're great cut flowers. So I'll give you a little bit of information about each one, but I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. But just think outside the box, think inside the box. You can do it straight, straight kind of lines. You can do it in the landscape. You can do it in raised beds. You can do it in containers. You got lots and lots of options. So there's no kind of cut and dry way of doing this. All right, let's first start with the boring. I was actually going to do this at the end, but I decided to do this at the beginning because you do need greenery in your bouquets and in your flower arrangements. You need some greenery, and you're going to have some greenery on the stems of the plants that you cut off and the flowers that you cut off usually. So you'll have a little bit of greenery in there anyways, but I do want to talk about some greenery that you might plant because they make great plants and it's great to use because they last a long time. So behind me is Poet's Laurel. Poet's Laurel is a great small perennial. It's actually evergreen. It'll get these little kind of orange berries you see on it. That does happen from time to time, but really it's grown for its greenery. It's got these great arching branches, pretty small growing plant. It can spread a little bit. It's not a super aggressive spreader. It's a little bit on the slower growing side, but it's a great plant to plant in the landscape just as a border. You can use it and it grows in a shady area very, very well. Can take some sun, but it's a great plant for greenery because it's just got those nice arching branches that just kind of pop in there. Nice long stems. You got anything that grows on a nice long stem, you're gonna hear me say that probably 100 times, is gonna make it easier to use for your floral arrangements. Another great greenery is ferns, of course. I love ferns. Especially if you're working in a shady area, you've got lots and lots of opportunities when it comes to ferns. I mean, look at just some of these examples behind me. You know, like the autumn fern right behind me here. Right here is an autumn fern, and that's got great new growth. You've got, the different types of holly ferns, ostrich ferns. There's just a huge assortment of ferns out there. And they make great greenery again because they've got those nice long stems and you've got all this greenery. You can shave some of it off. It's a great option, especially for a shady little pocket, in a container. I use a lot of ferns in containers these days. It's a really, really great option. So ferns make a great addition to any kind of shady kind of cut flower garden. For greenery, eucalyptus is another great option. Sometimes when we're making a cut flower garden, we're maybe looking for some height, something bigger, maybe even to create a little bit of shade. And eucalyptus is a great option. It gets pretty big. They can get up to 10 to 12, 15 feet tall, and you can limb them up as a small tree. So it makes a great option, and the greenery stays, just amazing, dried or fresh in floral arrangements, in wreaths. So you can use it at Christmas time, you can use it at Thanksgiving, you can use it really any time of the year to make floral arrangements. It is a great one. And you can get eucalyptus typically in the spring season. You might see some in the fall season as well. But eucalyptus is a great option. Just give it a little bit of space because it will get a little bit bigger than you might think. And you can limb it up, which I love. Turn it into a tree, and it's a great option. So eucalyptus is another great greenery option. Ivy. Ivy, a lot of people might not want to plant ivy because it is kind of aggressive. It can kind of take over areas, so be careful with it. There are some varieties nowadays that aren't quite as aggressive. English ivy is that traditional one that kind of gets all over the yard. So you might grow them in containers, which is what I've got here. Is a great option for you. Grow them in hanging baskets. Those long tendrils will be nice to use in floral arrangements. And you've got lots of variegation from the gold all the way to the green to the silver behind me. So you've got great options in adding color and just some trailing habit and just some greenery. So again, another shade-loving plant. So great options to include into the shade. And you always need a little bit of greenery when you're doing a cut flower garden. And the last one, of course, is boxwood. Boxwood's a great foundation shrub, something that you can grow in a little bit of shade, even sun nowadays with the new varieties. And the newer varieties are coming out that are much more resistant to the blight. And boxwood is evergreen. It lasts a long time cut. It makes great wreaths and garlands at Christmas time. It's great for making a centerpiece at Thanksgiving, but really, really nice just to add a little bit of greenery to a cut flower arrangement. So if you're making a bouquet, you might want some boxwood, so another great option. All right, now we're going to get into the fun stuff, the blooming plants. So we're going to start with full sun, and we're going to start with some shrubs. So these are roses. Of course, you think roses, right? Whenever we think about a cut flower garden or a flower arrangement, we're almost always going to say roses. Well, you've got lots of options when it comes to floribundas, grandifloras, hybrid teas, your traditional roses. I've done webinars in the past all about how to take care of roses, so if you're scared of them a little bit, then don't be. I can help you through it. We can help you through it here at the Garden Center. But roses make a great cut flower. Of course, long stem, lots of petals, lots of, that formal kind of flower. You can get some that have clusters of flowers. So, you might save some space. Now, they need full sun, and they're going to need a little bit of attention. So if you're, into cut flower gardens, if you're into kind of gardening, roses are going to be a great option because you're going to get lots of blooms. You're going to get instant gratification, which is what I love about roses. I'll show you another one here. This is a knockout rose. Knockout roses, typically aren't going to be kind of your long stem kind of, cut rose, but you get great clusters of blooms. They do last a fairly good amount of time in a flower arrangement, and you're going to get lots and lots of little roses on the end of a stem. So they make great arrangements, very, very easy to grow, and that's what I love about these. So if you're kind of worried about like a floribunda, grandiflora, hybrid tea, type of rose, maybe even a climbing rose, and you want to do a rose that's easy and simple, then you've got the ticket right here with these knockout roses. The double knockout is my favorite. It's got double the petal count. Super, super easy, disease resistant, insect resistant, needs full sun, and can get fairly good size, so you're going to want to give this some space. Typically getting 4x4, maybe 5x5, you can let them just go crazy. I've seen them as big as 7 to 8 feet high and wide. But usually you prune them back a little bit in the kind of February time frame, and you can keep them nice and bushy and full and kind of in control a little bit if you want to. But they're very, very easy to grow, and they bloom nonstop, and again, instant gratification. So a great option are knockout roses for cut flowers. Gardenias, of course, gardenias are amazing. You can't beat the fragrance of a gardenia, and they get good size. So again, we're kind of using shrubs here to fill some space. If you got space in your landscape, these make great landscape shrubs, as well as filling up some space in your cut flower garden. If you've got a big area and you're like kind of like, well, I can't put all perennials in it, I need some other things in there, gardenias are a great option. Can really pretty versatile, can grow pretty well in full sun. I like them in a little bit of shade, so they're pretty versatile. That great kind of aroma that you get from gardenias, and they last a long time in a floral arrangement. So really nice option is gardenias. Forsythia, you got to think throughout the year, you got to think different times. So forsythia, of course, is the sign of spring. When the forsythia bushes start to bloom, spring is on its way. The reason I love forsythia for floral arrangements is I want to bring some of that early spring indoors early, and just forsythia branches in a vase makes a great arrangement. It's very easy to do, and you can actually prune it just a little bit early before those buds even open. Stick it in some water, bring it inside, and they'll open up inside, and you get a nice, probably about 5 to 7 days of enjoyment with it. So a great option is forsythia on long branches, long straight branches, long arching branches. Really great option. And there's lots of different varieties of forsythia now that have bigger blooms, that maybe stay a little bit smaller too. But typical forsythia is going to get right around 5 to 6 feet high and wide. So pretty good sized bush, and a great option for that early spring color. Let's talk about some annual options. Zinnias are a great option. So zinnias bloom pretty much, early, really kind of mid-spring probably, so it's more of like a mid-spring to summer, but great in the summer. They don't stop blooming. Now annuals, of course, you're gonna have to plant every year, but you get great options. Zinnias come in a huge assortment of colors. So you got a huge assortment of colors. They're great for butterflies, hummingbirds love them. So you've got all the beneficial insects there, as well as creating, for a pollinator. So, but zinnias give you lots and lots of versatility. And again, you can see it right here. Long stems with that flower right on the end of it. So it makes it really easy to cut it and use it in floral arrangements. And the array of colors really helps. So if you're into pinks, if you're into purples, if you're into yellow, orange, reds, all of those colors you can get in zinnias, and they're pretty easy to grow even from seed. And I haven't mentioned that yet, but seed is a great option too. There's a lot of cut flowers that you can grow from seed. But zinnias are a great option that you can pop in. You can even get in some of our smaller packs as well, so you can start them a little bit earlier. But zinnias, great option. Another great annual is dahlias. Dahlias, I don't even know how many different styles and sizes of dahlias there are, probably thousands. But there are a huge assortment of colors. Great annual. Yeah, you got to plant them each year. You can dig up the bulb and bring it in and dry it out and then plant it again. But typically dahlias, you're going to grow as an annual crop, as an annual cut flower. But again, great array of colors. You got dinner plate dahlias that get a size of a dinner plate, down to these pom-pom dahlias. Lots and lots of assortment in colors, from purples, orange, whites, yellows, reds, maroons, all of the different colors that you can think of, dahlias come in. And they make a great option for an annual for cut flowers. Really good. And there are even some shorter ones, some smaller ones that stay a little bit more compact if you're dealing with a smaller space. Great container plant as well, great container flower. So if you need some cut flowers for containers to pop around your landscape, to pop around your house, dahlias are a great option, as well as zinnias. Snapdragons. Snapdragons make a great cut flower, and you can grow them in the kind of the cooler time frame. Typically in that January, February timeframe, they're not going to be blooming as heavily, but they bloom really well in the fall and really well in the spring, and they'll make it through the winter. So if you plant snapdragons with your pansies, it's a great option for a cut flower to make floral arrangements during those cooler time frames of the year. So another great option. We got to think all the way through the entire year. I need blooms throughout the year. So this is a great option. Snapdragons, nice long stem, lots and lots of blooms. You cut it a little bit earlier, they'll continue to open once they're in cut in a vase of water. So really great option of snapdragons, and a really kind of cool, sweet fragrance to them as well. Great annual. All right, let's talk about perennials. Perennials is probably the biggest class here, and there is a humongous selection. I'm gonna try and speed it up here a little bit faster, so hang with me, and you can always go back and watch this. All right, coneflowers. Coneflowers are awesome perennials. Drought tolerant, deer resistant, easy to grow. You can grow them in containers. They come in such a huge assortment of sizes and colors nowadays. So you can get them in small little, pom-pom ones. You can get them in yellow, orange, purple, white. They come in a huge assortment of colors, nice long stems, very easy to grow, disease resistant. They really don't have many problems. They'll spread. They'll start to kind of consume a little bit of the open areas of your cut flower garden. So that's why I love cone flowers. They're super easy to grow. And what's best about them is sometimes you need some seed pods, right? Sometimes you need those little, different looks that you want to add. So once a coneflower petal falls off, it still makes a great cut flower. You can dry them. You can dry those little pom-poms, those little spiky pom-poms that come on the end. Let's see if I can point. There's one right there. So if that center of that flower, you can dry it, and it makes a great, different look to a flower arrangement. So coneflowers, probably my number one perennial for full sun that I will grow for a cut flower garden. Next is daylilies. Huge assortment of daylilies. Daylilies are super easy. More of your summer blooms, mid to late spring, but into the summer, it's going to bloom all summer long, especially with these newer varieties that bloom consistently in a wide array of sizes and a great, great long stem. This is a great time to kind of point out when you're cutting your flowers, always have a pail of water with you. I think that's really important. It's a great little tip is to have a bucket with some water down the bottom. So as you cut them, you're putting them right in there. And also cut it all the way to the base. So daylilies, a lot of people will cut and then that stem has to die back and that takes energy away from the plant. Go all the way down to the base and get as low as you possibly can and get that entire stem out. One, you might need it for your floral arrangement. You might need that length. You can always cut it. You can't put it back on. So if you need the length, it's good to leave it on there. And then it's also better for the plant if we take that completely off because it doesn't have to go through that dieback period of that stem kind of dying back. So really, really good one. Also, start to learn the difference on daylilies between the seed pod and the flower pod. So you should be able to tell the flower pod has a little bit more of a petal look to it. It's got more of the outline of the petal on it, whereas the seed tends to get a little bit bumpier. It's a little bit limey green, and it tends to be a little bit more compact. I should have probably pulled up an image of that. But plants flower to seed. So if we take the seed off, it'll continue to flower. That's what we call deadheading. And you're going to be doing that in your cut flower garden anyways because you should be using a lot of it and you'll be actively in it and working it. But daylilies, great option, lots of colors, lots of new styles. The Stella Deora, the Happy Returns. The Stella Deora is a little bit more of this kind of orangey yellow, whereas the Happy Returns looks a little bit more like this kind of bright yellow. And then there's a huge assortment of other colors and great long stems. So daylilies, great option. Alstroemeria. Alstroemeria is a little bit trickier. Fine, it works great in a full sun perennial garden. Alstroemeria is used a lot in floral arrangements. I mean, if you ever buy a floral arrangement from a florist, you're probably going to get a little bit of Alstroemeria in it. They use it a lot because it's easy, it blooms quick, it lasts a long time in a floral arrangement, which is why it's used so much. It's got this kind of really shiny, kind of glossy green foliage, which is really, really nice in arrangements, and it's got clusters of flowers, and they come in a huge assortment of colors. Probably a little bit harder to find in a garden center. Sometimes you'll find seeds for them, but definitely a great option if you see them in the garden center. And you got to kind of just find the time. It's more of a mid to late spring blooming plant into the summer. But Alstroemerias are pretty easy once you get them established. They can start to kind of spread, and each year they get bigger and bigger. But it's a great option for cut flower Alstroemeria. Black-eyed Susans. Black-eyed Susans are great. Very, very easy to grow. And again, coming out with so many different varieties. Rudbeckia is also another common name used for it, or really the Latin name for it, Rudbeckia. But Black-eyed Susan, the common name, lots and lots of assortments of colors here. But the typical Goldstrom Black-eyed Susan, nice long stems, tons of flowers, easy to grow, deer resistant, it's got all the acumen. It's a really, really easy one to grow. Great for pollinators. And again, another cool option is if you let that flower go, that little pom-pom right there will stay, and you get these nice little black seed pods that you can use in floral arrangements. So use them. If you don't use them, let the petals fall off, dry them, and you can use those in arrangements in the future, whether it be a wreath or a garland or be part of a floral arrangement. So Black-eyed Susans, great option, super, super easy to grow. Coreopsis, another great option. Usually you can get a little bit more clusters of flowers here. I love this one, like this thread leaf variety here. This is, I think, Zagreb, or it's one of the thread leaf Coreopsis. Coreopsis come in a huge array of plants, some that bloom in early spring to mid-spring, some that bloom mid to late, some that bloom late to summer. And they're very, very easy to grow, great for pollinators, but also amazing for cut flowers. And I just love that foliage because it kind of fills it in a little bit with that kind of thread leaf foliage. But Coreopsis, very, very easy to grow, great perennial, comes back each year, very reliable, and gets nice and full. So Coreopsis is a great option, kind of like a smaller black-eyed Susan. Doesn't have the black eye, but it's a very, very good option, and lots of colors too. You can get these in sometimes purples and pinks, but the yellow is probably the most common one that you're gonna see, and it's a great option for a perennial cut flower. Salvia. Salvia is lots and lots of options of salvias. I probably didn't put agastache in my pictures. I'm pretty sure I didn't. But salvia is a great option. Agastache is very, very similar. Agastache is in the mint family. So salvias and agastache are very, very easy to grow. Similar flowers. You got these kind of long spires. You're going to need this for floral arrangement. It looks great mixed in with some other flowers like daylilies. Come in a wide array of colors, from the whites to the purples to the dark blacks. I mean, really, really nice option to add some different height, some nice straight up growth for your floral arrangements. And salvias are easy to grow, and they come in, again, a wide array of sizes, from smaller bushy plants that only get about 18 inches to some that can get up to 24 to 36 inches. So a little bit, a range in size of plants for your landscape, for your cut flower garden. Salvia, great option, easy to grow, and keep cutting them because they'll keep on blooming all the way through the summer. So another great long time bloomer as well. Lilies. Lilies a little bit shorter bloom period, but you can't beat a lily, especially these Asiatic lilies. So Asiatic lilies, really great option. Really cool foliage. So I think you can see it right here. Nice long stem, glossy green foliage, easy to grow, and come in a huge assortment of colors, from white to this kind of cool orange, yellow, purples, lots and lots of options when it comes to lilies, and it makes a great flower. And of course, you probably say, well, aren't they bulbs? They are bulbs. We sell them sometimes more as a perennial than a bulb, so this one actually comes back each year, but some of the lily bulbs won't. So you kind of have to gauge which ones you want to plant. But it did make me think about bulbs and say, what bulb options are there? So there's a huge assortment of bulbs out there, and a lot of them make great cut flowers. The reason I bring up bulbs is because you have to get them at different times of the year in the garden center, and it's a great value. You can get a bag of 50 daffodil bulbs for 20, 30 bucks, and you get 50 plants. You can't buy plants cheaper than that. So you go and plant them out, you plant them in groups, they get bigger and bigger each year, the clump gets bigger, the bulbs spread underneath the ground. They're very easy to grow. Think of daffodils, of course, as a great option. So daffodils is the first one I start with. Huge assortment of colors. And the reason I love daffodils is kind of the same reason that I like the forsythia. Forsythia is an earlier season. So sometimes we want to start our flower arrangements, in February when we have those nice warm days. It's like, oh, you know what, spring is coming, I'd like to do a floral arrangement. So you might say, well, what do I have blooming? Well, daffodils can start pretty early, as early as February, and then bloom all the way through really the April timeframe. So you got a long assortment. You've got some early bloomers, mid bloomers, and late bloomers. Get an assortment, get mixes, plant them, have fun with them. They're easy. Nothing will mess with a daffodil bulb. Even the squirrels don't mess with them, so voles don't eat them. So it's a great option for a cut flower garden because you get them early. Now they are done after that, and you gotta leave that foliage on there. That's the most important thing. Let that foliage go to the point where it's laying kind of flat, looks yellow, and starts to die off naturally. Then you can cut it. But that process needs to happen in order for it to really bloom like this next year. But a huge assortment of colors, very easy and very affordable too. Great way to fill in some pockets here and there. Tulips, another great option. Tulips make great cut flowers for the early spring season. Of course, we always think of tulip arrangements when we think of flower arrangements, and huge assortment of colors, huge assortment of sizes, some that get 36, 48 inches tall. I like the shorter ones because they tend to not fall over as much. So, typically that Darwin hybrid is a really great option. But something that's going to stay a little bit shorter and squattier is what I like. But to each his own, so get whatever you like, and then you got a huge assortment of colors, and tulips are a great one. You got to plant these in the fall. So daffodils and tulips, you got to plant in the fall. Another great option is liatris. Liatris you can get in the spring for summer blooms. I love these kind of furry kind of looking blooms. They're a lot of fun to add into floral arrangements because of that look and that height. Long stem, really cool look, long lasting bloom when you put it in some water in a floral arrangement. Liatris, a great bulb. You should be able to find those typically in that kind of spring, probably right around that March, April timeframe. And then crocosmia or crocosmia, however you want to say it, tomato. But crocosmia is a great option Really great foliage too. I love the foliage on this. It's got this kind of blade grass-like foliage on it, which is a great option for floral arrangements for some greenery. But these blooms are really cool because they're arching and they've got all these little petals that fall out and kind of hang out. So it's a little bit more of a hanging bloom, which makes a really cool arrangement if you're putting it in a higher place. Sometimes we want to do that. We want to put a floral arrangement up on, a tall shelf or something, and then those flowers that hang down look at you, and it makes a great, great arrangement. These bloom in the summer. You got to plant them in the spring. So another great one, and that's just to scratch the surface on blooms from bulbs and cut flowers from bulbs. They're huge assortment, and bulbs are a great value. So I definitely encourage you. You just got to pay attention and get to the garden center at that right time. Typically they're sold for about a 2, maybe 3 month time frame. So your fall crop is usually September, October, maybe into November. You can plant those, your daffodils, your tulips, and then your spring season where you can get the Liatris and the Crocus Mia and a lot of other ones, Ranunculus and all those different ones. You get those in the spring and you plant them, typically right around that, late March, April time frame is a great time. And then once you get into May, you're starting to see a little bit less selection. You're starting to see them in pots typically blooming. All right, let's talk about shade. We're gonna run through shade here real quick. It's one of my favorite categories. Shade plants, you gotta start with hydrangeas. One of the all-time best cut flowers because huge assortment. Now, most hydrangeas are pretty big, so you got to give them a little bit of space, but if you got some space to tuck these into your landscape in a shady spot, they will just take care of themselves. They're super easy to grow, and you get this huge assortment of colors from the pinks to the purples to the blues, and nowadays they just have so many different varieties. I mean, it's just a great opportunity, great option. Nice long stems, last a long time in a floral arrangement, and there's just nothing better. You think of Mother's Day, this is what hydrangeas are. You think of, throughout the summer. I mean, now hydrangeas bloom in the spring and all the way through the summer because they've got all these repeat bloomers. So you got to keep cutting them and keep using those blooms and arrangements, and they are just stunning. And the styles, there's so many different options, from these big, huge white mop heads. This is your traditional mop head, your big, huge white mop heads like your Annabelle Lees and different things like that. Your spiky kind of panicle-shaped blooms that you're going to get out of your limelight hydrangeas and fire and lots of different options here. And these actually will change colors as you leave them on. So you might get a little bit of like a pink hue to them. Really, really awesome options. And there's just, I could talk for probably an hour on just varieties of hydrangeas, just naming them all. I didn't even put a lace cap in here, but lace cap hydrangeas are another great option. I mean, just look at this assortment. You can cut them early. You can cut them when they're probably right about, let's see if I can point to it, right about like that. When that kind of lime green color pops, they'll even open a little bit more from there. But you can add them to arrangements and they just make such a great, stunning look to it. So hydrangeas have got to be on the top of my list when it comes to planting a cut flower garden. So if you got space, do it, but they're also making smaller ones. I think of like the one that we sold a lot of last year was the Bobo hydrangea. It's a little white blooming hydrangea. It only got about 2 by 2. Pop Star is a new one that is a lace cap that blooms on a smaller plant, and just tons and tons of them. So lots and lots of options in hydrangeas. I definitely encourage you to put some in your landscape, put some in your cut flower garden. Needs a little bit of shade, but they will definitely be a lot of value for you when it comes to a cut flower. Peonies, great option. Another great shade plant is peonies. If we're dealing with, we want a cut flower garden and we have a lot of shade and we're like, I don't have a whole lot of options here. You do. Hydrangeas, peonies are a great one. Peonies, typically bloom in that mid to late spring time frame. Again, kind of that around Mother's Day time frame. But peonies are a great option. Great cut flower, lasts a long time. Huge assortment of colors. You can get some that don't get very big, like your herbaceous peonies. Typically, you're going to get right around that 3 by 3 size. You can get some like the Ito peonies. That is probably what this kind of more resembles. Ito peonies are a cross between a tree peony and a herbaceous peony. Tree peonies are going to be harder to find these days because the Ito peony has just kind of taken over that. Ito crossed the tree with the herbaceous, so you get the reliability of the herbaceous peony, but you get the bloom size and the look and the colors that you get out of a tree peony. So great opportunity there. But just a traditional herbaceous peony is super rewarding. You get pretty much, it gets bigger and bigger each year. You get more and more blooms out of it each year. You can cut them a little bit early as they begin to open, and you get a nice longevity in your floral arrangements. So great option there as peonies. Heucheras. So you might not think heucheras too much. Now it can be, I did 2 pictures here. One to show kind of the greenery. They actually have a pretty good longevity as far as greenery grows. You can sometimes get varieties, especially as they get older, that kind of, have a bigger plant. So when they get about, right around that 12, 18-inch size, most of those leaves, the stem goes all the way to the base, and you can cut it out and you can use some of that greenery in arrangements because there's just so many different colors of them. It's one of my favorite shade plants of all time. It's pretty much evergreen, but really what I love about it for cut flowers are these little kind of blooms that come out. They're a lot of fun to use, they're easy to use, and sometimes you just need something kind of dainty and small and kind of light and fluffy and airy that kind of just pops in and out of your floral arrangements. And you can get these, they come in whites and pinks and different colors, and they're very, very easy, and they come on that nice kind of long stem. And heucheras will bloom kind of randomly throughout the entire spring into summer season. So really, really great option is heucheras. Love them for the foliage, love them in the landscape, love them in the garden. But definitely a great little cut flower as well. Astilbe blooms kind of in that mid to late spring time frame. A little bit into the summer. Great foliage, very fern-like foliage, but I put this picture because, man, you can see the color arrangement. You got whites, pinks, reds, purples, even some that kind of have a little bit of, a little different shade where it looks like the white has kind of a little bit of pink bleeding into it. Great option for the shade garden. Really, really great plant. Easy to grow, gets bigger and bigger each year, and just perfect little plumy blooms. Kind of reminds you of a hydrangea / fern. But a great option for the shade, and lots of options to cut on and use in floral arrangements. And then of course bleeding heart. I talked about those, kind of hanging arrangements where you just kind of need something kind of hanging over the side of your arrangement. Bleeding heart is a great option, grows in the shade very, very well. You can get even different varieties nowadays that have lots of different colors, but bleeding heart is a great option, great perennial, comes back each year. Very, very easy to grow in a shady location. And then of course, one of my all-time favorites that I got to finish on is hellebores. Hellebores are one of the easiest plants to grow out there in the shade. It's super, super durable. They bloom when nothing else is blooming. You can't beat a hellebore, also known as Lenten rose. Come in a wider range of colors nowadays, from the whites to the pinks, to the purples, even the dark, almost black colors, and even sometimes a little bit of yellow mixed in there with that white. So really, really great option. I love how the blooms kind of fade and change colors. They last a long time on the plant, so you can cut them when they're early and then you can cut them again when they're late. You can grow them in containers. You can do so many different things with hellebores. They need a little bit of shade, but they are super, super durable. Very, very easy to grow. Smaller plants. Grow them in containers, grow them underneath old big trees, that have big root systems. You're like, I can't plant anything. Hellebores, Lenten rose is my go-to and makes a great cut flower. And now even the foliage on some of the hellebores have a kind of variegation to it. Makes a great little addition to a floral arrangement. Pop in some of that foliage in there, especially once they get some size, and you can do that. It's a really, really great plant. Hellebores is always on the top of my list as a perennial. It's evergreen, so you always have it. So you don't really have to worry about it kind of going away, at least here in the Hampton Roads area. It's a really, really good one. Hellebores, Lenten rose. You got to get some in your landscape. You got to get some for your cut flower garden, and it's a great one for the shade as well. So you can see, even in the shade, there's some amazing options. In the full sun area, you're going to get lots and lots of color. In the shade, you'll get less color, but you'll still get great options and opportunities. So you got opportunities across your yard, whether you're doing a devoted space to a cut flower garden, or whether you're doing adding plants into your landscape. If you're doing it on a deck, porch, or patio, the possibilities are endless. There's no designated way that you have to do this other than pick some plants, try them. This is a great list to start with and get your kind of the momentum going and get your brain thinking and thinking about all the different opportunities out there. But definitely it makes a great option to add these plants to your landscape just to have some cut flower options throughout the year. Think about bulbs, think about seeds, think about raised beds, think about all of the different options that you have. The list is really, really big. There's tons and tons of options for cut flowers. These are just some of my favorites, and I hope you all enjoy this. I hope we get to see you here in the garden center and help you with your cut flower garden. Grow your own bouquet. It's a very, very fun, rewarding activity. I hope you all enjoy this, and I will see you next time. So thank you, everybody. Bye.